welcome everybody to this edition of Masterclass Transition Talks. Today we have a special one for you. We have a good friend, a great friend, a guest that I've known for, believe it or not, over 30 years. Yes, over 30 years.
You don't look that old.
No, we don't. We don't. No grays in the beard, not at all. Again, Transition Talks Masterclass really is about kind of digging deeper and talking to individuals about some deeper questions like the how, the when, the why, about their own lives, aligning with their purpose, and just kind of asking some questions that go underneath the surface. So I am proud and happy to bring to you Dr. Amy Bratten with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here, and it's so great to see you again.
Absolutely.
We don't see enough of each other, and if this is what it takes, I'm in every time.
Definitely. We don't enough, but again, if this is how we have to do it, I'll take it every time.
Same.
So we actually have had conversations in a previous episode, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper into different parts that we haven't discussed. Again, this master class really is about talking to people about things that are inspiring, but also intriguing about how you approach different things and how you kind of gotten to the point that you have, because you're very accomplished. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because your titles have changed a little bit. You've taken on more responsibilities at Southeastern University. So I want you to give your official title, but then you can kind of talk about some of the things that you're doing as well that have been added to your plate.
Happy to do that. I am Dr. Amy Bratten, as you have well introduced me, so thank you for that. My job at Southeastern University is officially Associate Provost. So a lot of people don't know what a provost is, which means a lot of people don't know what an associate provost does. And I'm okay with that on most days, because that leaves a little bit of ambiguity there for people to just kind of put me in whatever direction they need me to go. But I'll backtrack a minute and say that a provost at a university is the vice president, the head honcho, the one in charge of all academics and everything that kind of trickles down from academics from there. So as the associate provost, I support our provost in everything that she does and everything that she needs to get done. So at Southeastern, what that means for me is I oversee the study abroad program. I oversee faculty professional development. And this year, I actually have stepped into the seat of serving as the Dean of the College of Arts and Media. So that means I really take a deeper dive into leading that faculty and the coursework and the students there in the College of Arts and Media. And that covers things like humanities and communication, music, visual arts. So it kind of covers a lot of the gamut of everything that you would consider arts and sciences within humanities, we'll say that. So I usually will do things like travel every now and then with my study abroad responsibilities. I also teach a lot of courses. I originally was hired to teach education courses at Southeastern. So I still get to dabble in that a little bit. And I've gotten to teach some TESOL courses through the English department. So I kind of have my fingers in a lot of the things at Southeastern, which I absolutely love. As a former educator in a public school, you know this as well, that there's never going to be a day that looks the same. There's always an adventure of some kind. And Absolutely. My job now with the various roles I have kind of speaks to that. So anything that comes across my desk, I'm here for it.
Well, again, like as you were talking, just the many different roles that you have to play. I got tired just by listening. I'm like, I don't know how you balance all of those different titles and different roles per day. But again, balance is something. I actually did a podcast with a good friend of mine about mental clarity and, just having habits that are productive and still being able to maintain that balance with all of those different things that you're trying to do. I'm sure you have a ritual that you go through each day that kind of centers you to even be able to deal with all those different things that are changing constantly in your roles and responsibilities. Because I'm sure, assisting in so many different roles can sometimes be possibly overwhelming. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a great topic to dive into because honestly, I'm really not good at balance, which is probably why I do so many things, is because if you want something done, you give it to somebody who's busy, right? Because they'll just figure it out. That tends to
Mm,
be where I go. But I have also realized that I'm not as young as I once was. I don't
right.
have what I feel like is 24 hours to actually operate in the day because I need to sleep.
There you go.
I need to stop and eat. Plus, I have a
Mhm.
35-minute commute to and from work. So,
Mm,
the best that I can do as far as rituals or finding balance in my life is I do rely a lot on my husband for accountability. I
sure.
do rely a lot on Google Calendar. There
Okay.
are specific time slots that I know that I have to have reserved for certain things. So when I'm in this spring semester, for example, I'm teaching 3 face-to-face classes in a 3-hour block. So I know in those
Mm,
3-hour blocks on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm in the classroom. So I'm not accessible to anybody.
sure.
But what that meant was I reserved Tuesdays and Thursdays for things like meetings and committee work. And I also go out into the field, into public schools in this district, and do some intern observations and evaluations. So being
Mhm.
strategic with how I schedule work things is important, but also having accountability with the important people in my life. So my husband, he knows that when I come home from work and we sit down and have dinner, I am not going to be doing any work from dinner on. It used to
Mm,
not be that way. So that's
mm,
something kind of new that we've established to make sure that I am kind of keeping some balance. If there
sure.
are some evening events that I have to be at for work, I won't come home in between. I'll just stay there and grab something quick and simple to eat and then go do my evening activity. That way, I'm not spending 35 minutes driving home, showering and redoing the makeup and eating, and then driving 35 minutes back to work so I can do the evening thing and then come back another 35 minutes. So it just, logistics makes sense with strategy and making sure that I'm scheduling the best I can, but still leaving that personal time for reflection and for recuperation. My
Sure.
weekends, I also will let myself, because I tend to be a workaholic too, which doesn't add to this whole balance thing. But on the
Mhm.
weekends, I'll promise myself one afternoon that I can sit down and do some work to keep up with email and maintain a low level of inbox inquiries.
There
But
you
I
go.
also then know that I've got another day and a half that I'm not going to be working. So I
Right.
just have to set those limits.
Okay. And a couple of things I wanted to draw out because a lot of people may be overwhelmed from just the sheer what seems like blocking off certain amounts of time to do certain things, because sometimes that does go wrong. And sometimes people have difficulties establishing clear boundaries. Two things I found that were very impactful if a person is able to implement it. Choosing a time not to work after is very important because,
Yes.
again, if you're a workaholic, you really don't know when to turn off
Right.
the working button, and that can cause burnout and different things of that nature as well. Taking full advantage of the commute, that 35 minutes that you spoke about, blocking off that time to serve multiple purposes. I found also I used to have a much longer commute. I
Hmm.
used to use that for things like whether I would be listening to inspirational programming, whether I would be listening to something that would help center me, help make me be more calm when I got to work, whatever that may be. Using that time very intentionally instead of just listening to a regular FM radio station that might just be playing whatever happens to come on the particular radio station. And we've touched on it a little bit, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into the how. Of course, the theme of this particular masterclass was focused on the how, focused on the why, and the when. So we touched on it, but how do you really stay aligned and motivated in your purpose with all those different roles that you play?
Great question. That is still, I'm exploring that little by little. I'm a lifelong learner. And so I know that I'm going to continually get better at the things that I'm doing. So I really have to be reflective, which means I have to stop and I have to think about what is it that I'm doing? What am I doing right? And where can I get better so that I can
Mhm.
consistently learn and improve? Right. So
Sure.
one of the hows really is, it sounds kind of cheesy and very technology based, but seriously, my Google Calendar is a very important thing. Not only do I put every single appointment on there, but I color code them. So the color coding is something that is, it's brain-based research shows that our human eyeballs are really drawn towards color.
Mhm.
So if we're looking at color and we're differentiating between color and what the purpose of those colors is, then
Sure.
we'll make sure that our brain is helping our psyche really to align
Mhm.
with what it is that that purpose is and to stick to it. So when I have personal things, I put those in blue. When I have classes, those are in red. When I have meetings that are one-on-one with students, those are yellow. So if I know this in my brain, that helps me stay accountable to what it is I'm doing. So when I'm
Okay.
really looking for those personal blocks of time that are in blue, those are the ones that stand out to me to say, this is not for work. Don't do anything in that except for those personal things. Now I'll schedule appointments in there that are personal appointments. When we go out to dinner with friends, I actually put it into my Google Calendar as an appointment so I don't have to remember it because I know there's so many other things that I'm remembering. The other thing
Ah,
that I really kind of rely on is the fact that brain-based research also shows that humans are not wired to multitask.
mhm.
You really should only be focusing on one thing at a time, which
Mhm.
is why I will put time segments for different tasks.
Mhm.
I've read this in a lot of leadership manuals about how do you manage email? Well, if you're not checking your email all day long, it's actually better for your brain. So give yourself an hour at the beginning of the day, give yourself an
Mhm.
hour at the end of the day. And that's when you actually sit in front of your inbox and process the emails.
Sure.
But what I used to do was I used to get my emails on my phone and check them consistently throughout the day, all day
Mhm.
long. What that did was it pulled my attention away from whatever task I was actually working on
Of
to
course.
look at that email. And what
Right.
happens in the brain is your brain has to reset and redevote its attention and remember what's happening in that task after
Right.
you've pulled that attention away because of a
Right.
quick email. So although you think it's something that we can do in a 30-second turnaround time, it's
Right.
actually going to cost you more time on completing that original task to pull your
Right.
attention away.
And what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense if you think of it from like more of a practical sense. If I'm juggling apples, it's probably going to take me some more time to go look in a book and read a sentence and then start to juggle apples again. They're two
Yeah,
separate tasks, and you really have to get going in one and stop and then start the other really before you go back to the other one and do it effectively. So a lot of what you said really made sense. I just think that we get so full of desire to complete things.
yeah,
And some people, of course, I think that part of what you said, the color coding is great, but if you think of your day as a big list, and if you really look at these things, and if you have 10 meetings and they're all color coded, but you did all of those 10 things, you're going to feel a greater sense of accomplishment because you stuck to your schedule and it kind of made it to where not only was it organized, you were prepared for the shift in from juggling to reading, uh,
right.
for an example. So that's great stuff. That is very great. Again, if you think this is going to help somebody, please share this to someone else. Again, uh, masters of yourself, again, master class. These are people who are able to really just excel in their own areas based upon knowing themselves and knowing how to prepare themselves for excellence and achieving purpose in their own lives. So this is great content. Again, please share it. Moving forward, I know I jumped around a little bit. We had some pre-conversation, but I wanted to dig a little bit because this is one thing that people have a difficulty actually balancing as well. Work with a spouse, and you are married, and you've been married for quite a long time at this point, and it seems like a lot of people have difficulty really finding that spouse and understanding enough about themselves to really go into a marriage and know what they need for the marriage to be healthy when they come together. So this is going towards that when question. Because again, people who haven't been married, or some people who have been married and then they got divorced, they may second guess themselves in terms of how to choose a spouse. How do you know when you have chosen or seen the right spouse as a potential mate? So with your spouse, when did you know, like, you know what, this might be the one right here? I'm pretty sure.
So it's so funny that you asked that question because we're about to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary in March.
Oh, wow. 20
So,
years.
yes, 20, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of people would find that that is a successful marriage, but I say it's still a marriage in progress because
Mm,
even though we've been married for 20 years, we're still learning how to make it work. So I think with that comes a lot of humility on both parties' accounts because I can't just get into a routine and think it's going to stick like that forever because as a human, I'm consistently changing. As a human, he's consistently changing. So we both have to know that the marriage changes as well. So I think going into it, knowing that people are going to morph, the marriage is going to morph, circumstances are going to change. There's nothing that we can do to control all of those factors. So we just have to kind of give in to that and know that you want to be with the person that you feel is worth exploring for a very long time
mm,
because they're going to keep changing, right?
okay.
So one of the things that I did notice though, that big, some people would say a red flag, but I would say that big siren, that big light that started blinking was the second time I talked to Jake was on the phone. Well, the first time was on the phone, but the second time that I really kind of realized, ooh, there's something different here. I
Mm,
was talking to him the first time on the phone. It was about 3 hours. The second time I talked to him on the phone was about 5 hours. I don't
mm,
like to talk on the phone. I've got too many things to do. I've
yeah,
got tasks to accomplish. And at that time in my life, I was a first year, brand new public school, middle school teacher. I
right.
was not an education major, so I was learning what it meant to be a teacher.
Sure.
And a few weeks after that is when I was starting my master's degree as a full time student at UCF. So I would get in my car 3 nights a week from my middle school and drive an hour and a half to get to my master's degree classes because those were the days of face to face classes. There was
Yeah,
not the
that's
legit
tough.
online learning, right?
Right.
So when I knew that I was taking time away from scheduling and tasks and my furthering my education to talk to this guy, I knew that there was something there
Okay.
because that was abnormal for me. And I didn't even
Sure.
pay attention to the time until I got off the phone with him and realized, oh my gosh, 3 hours and then 5 hours on the phone? What is happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
Aha.
Okay. When you start to reprioritize, one thing I was told a while ago, it's like when someone makes you question what you do on a daily basis, pay attention
That's
because it's not
right.
like you don't have a routine already. If they
That's
just
right.
make you abandon your routine,
Yes.
yeah, they
Yes.
may be someone special.
And if somebody could keep my attention for 3 hours and then 5 hours in a row, that's glorious.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely something that does not happen very often.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So again, and that's a wonderful story. I think people need to hear success stories, even though the story is still being told. You
In
know, younger
progress.
people sometimes they don't really see a lot of people be successful in their career like you are, and still balance a successful marriage along with that. So I love how you said someone who you want to explore and continually explore. I don't think that most people approach a person in that regard. They think they know them, and then they kind of look sometimes negatively upon the person changing as we age. But of course, you know, we lose hair, we lose our memory, we gain wisdom, you know, we gain insight, gain weight.
Gain
There's a lot of
weight.
loss and gaining going on in there.
Yes.
So we definitely have to explore different stages with different people with an open mind. So I like how you put that because it seems like you're very excited and enthusiastic about that process, which is good after 20 years almost.
Right. So
Yeah.
Jake and I met when we were in our mid to late 20s. That means there are 25-ish years of stories that I need to explore and find out about him. I don't think I'll ever really truly know everything there is to know about him. And I think
Mhm.
that's part of that wonderment of can I spend the rest of my life figuring out even more? And then add in those changes. And all that does is that that widens the gap a little bit more. There's always going to be something new to find out about my spouse. It's not like I'm with him 24/7. No spouse is with their spouse 24/7.
Right.
That means you've got more to explore. Keeps going.
I think the fact that you're in education makes you have that growth mindset a little easier than some people.
Maybe.
Yeah, you're not exactly the person who's just going to stay still and just work the same job for 30 years.
Right.
So, and I don't think that's a lot of people now. And there's a lot of adjustments that have to take place as a result of kind of finding, why do you think you're actually here on earth? Because a lot of people do struggle, and in stages, to be very honest. Like, your purpose as a grandparent is somewhat redefined versus when you're a parent, versus when you're a child. And I think sometimes people struggle to find that here we go back to that balance, but also being excited about that transition to a different stage of development in life. I didn't even really think about it, but I saw that they sometimes, geriatrics, they have classes for older people, basically teaching them how to behave, act, what to expect when you get to a certain age. And I'm just like, they got classes for that? But when you think about it, just like, well, if you've never been there before, it would make sense to take a class on what to do when you get to that point, probably a little bit prior to. But again, that exploring thing that you're discussing really makes that a little bit of an easier transition. So before I get to more of the purpose and why you feel you're here on earth, that is that why, that centering question, I'm going to throw in a what. I know that's not part of it.
I'm ready.
People face adversity and they look at people like yourself and they're just like, that's great, that's wonderful, but I've been through so much and I don't know if I really could, challenge myself to be as driven and as optimistic, to be very honest, because people don't know that there's a backstory to all stories. And you've had some difficulties that you had to face within your marriage with your husband. So the what I'm throwing in here, that's not exactly a part of the title, but I think is extremely important, is what is one of the biggest obstacles that you've had to overcome to get to the point that you're at right now?
We've actually had a number of ups and downs and ups and downs. The adversity or the struggles is what I'll share, because a lot of the ups or the victories came from facing those adversities and making it through together. So some of our lows, I guess we could say, when we first decided that we were going to start our family, we tried and tried, but there were miscarriages after miscarriages after miscarriages. It was not a pleasant time. I even said to Jake, I will completely and totally understand if you want to leave me and go find a different wife who can provide you children. And he was like, are you smoking crack right now? What is the matter with you? No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But that's one of the lows, right? But the high was the very end of that conversation when he was basically telling me that I was out of my mind, right? Because he was completely and totally in love and devoted to me. And whether we had children biologically or not, okay. So we went ahead and we went through the foster care system and we became licensed foster care parents and licensed adoptive parents. So we had a set of brother and sister who came to live with us, and they were in the foster care system. One of our lows was when they actually went home to their biological mom and dad, because we were under the impression those children were going to be ours. So even though it was a low for us, it was a high for them, because in the foster care system, the goal is reunification, to get that family unit back together. So we were able to serve that purpose of bringing the brother and sister from separate homes into our home together, reintegrate them into a relationship, and then send them back home as a healthy pair back to their mom and dad. So although that hurt us, it was good for them. So that's a piece of adversity too, because we had to really do some soul searching. Do we want to stay in this? And Jake was like, I don't know that I can deal with that anymore, because we got so attached to those kids. but we knew the purpose, right? So we decided, okay, well, maybe instead of doing fostering, we'll just do adoption.
Mhm.
So it was only a couple weeks later when we were actually matched with the two kids that became our son and daughter.
Mhm.
So we then adopted our kids. Everything was great. It's also a little bit Pollyanna for me to say that when we adopted our kids, it was great and easy and wonderful, because it wasn't great, easy, and wonderful. They were 8 and 10 years old. So we
Sure.
went straight from being non-parents to parents of preteens
Mm.
and the beginning onset of adolescence, right?
Right.
Most parents get to transition into that and grow into their parenting while their children are growing up. We were on stage right away. So we had a
Right.
whole different set of challenges.
Of
And
course.
and there are a lot of adoptive parents who actually divorce one another because they learn once they adopt the kids that they have different parenting theories and foundations, and it doesn't work. So
Mm.
we made sure that we made our marriage a priority in
Right.
addition to parenting these two new kids. So that was
Sure.
some more ups and downs. And then a few years after the kids moved in with us and we had adopted them and they were ours, and the judge even told my son, it's as though your mother gave birth to you. She is now your mom. And so my daughter and my son kind of joke about that. But
Mhm.
um, a few years after the adoption was final and we were all living this happy, wonderful life, my husband was in a car accident.
Right.
And the car crash actually resulted in him being medically flown to the trauma intensive care unit, where about 12 hours, maybe 20 hours after that initial crash, I had to make all life and death decisions for him because he was in a medically induced coma because the trauma was so severe that they didn't think he was going to make it.
Right.
So, about 11 surgeries after he was in the hospital, I
Mm.
had to make that decision to allow the medical team to amputate his left leg. And that in a split second, I had to make the decision, save the leg or save the guy. I kind of like the
Sure.
guy. So I decided,
Yeah.
let's save the guy. Right.
Makes sense.
So in order to save his life, I had to agree for the medical team to amputate his left leg. And so that started us on a series of about 6 months worth of hospital stays. And actually, it was a complete 6 months of a hospital stay. Then we went home for about a month and came back to the hospital for another month. And in that time, we racked up about 40 different surgeries just for that amputation site. And in that split second of deciding to save the life or save the leg, everything changed. So my
Sure.
role as a wife changed. My role as a mom changed. Like my role in the family changed, just like Jake's role as a police officer changed.
Right.
His role as a husband and, the head of the household, like all those things changed and morphed. And we had no idea the ramifications that how far that would spread.
And how long had
But
you been married at that particular point?
so we were about 5 years at that point, and my kids and I came to his hospital room and celebrated our 3-year family anniversary by having a Subway picnic on the floor in the hospital room. And then
Mm.
once Jake got out of the hospital, we went for a family vacation, and then we celebrated our anniversaries very differently from there on out. And so
From that
now we
point.
actually have a new anniversary that we celebrate, which is a celebration of the day that Jake defied the odds and he actually lived and survived to tell the story. So there was that, like that was a big, big change of life right there. So we've had more adversity since then, with kids growing and morphing and changing, and their perspectives are very different from their backgrounds. We've had to deal with that, but as parents, we've had to learn how to transition from being hands-on, overarching parents to life coaches because our kids are now in their early 20s. They're now
Sure.
adults, so we don't have the same control that we had before, which we never really had control. I think we talked about that in our last conversation with
We
free
did.
will and kids are kids. But now at this point, we have more of a coaching role than even a parenting role. So it's been different. There have been lots of ups and downs, like I said before, but the
Right.
victory is we seem to always come out of that adversity as a stronger couple. Even though roles may change and things might look different, we have to accept that and move
Sure.
forward.
One of the beautiful things I think you said was an anniversary for celebrating beating the odds.
Mhm.
And I've never heard that before. I've never heard of that terminology quite framed like that. But again, we're so used to celebrating things that sound epic and wonderful, the completion of tasks, the end of high school, graduation, but to actually celebrate life-altering events that you actually live to make it through and become stronger, that can be very empowering. And I can see it strengthening the bond between a
Mhm.
family unit. So thank you for sharing that, because again, someone who may not view it that same way, chapter by chapter, I'm sure that was not an easy process, and it's something worth celebrating. But sometimes people have to tell you that in order to make it more of a cathartic and ultimately victorious process, overcoming those odds. So that was very insightful. Um, and the last question, I know we've been getting deep, y'all. Again, share this to people, because people need information and inspiration to live. And to be honest with you, most people are not having these conversations with their friends because they're vulnerable. They don't want to be labeled as weak, or they don't want to be labeled as getting too low. Like, life is depressing with COVID and people dying and different things. But we do have to talk about how to make it through life and how to be happy and overcome. Honestly, but so this information and this inspiration is very important. So please share it to people who you think could benefit from it as well, because if you don't give it to them, who will? If you're their friend or if you're their loved one, think about it that way. Obviously, I've enjoyed our time. We could talk for a lot of time, but I wanted to make it sure it was concise. We will be chopping this up, kind of giving bite-sized things to people. So hopefully it helps provide mental clarity for them in different situations, balance how to face adversity, how to be inspired, how to find the right spouse. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things. And this last question is somewhat overarching, but I think we've kind of touched different parts of how you would possibly achieve this in different parts of your life, because really we've discussed parenthood, we've discussed the professional world, raising children in adverse circumstances. So we really covered a lot. But the last question I kind of had to do with pretty much aligning yourself with what you think your purpose is on earth. And sometimes it's very simple. I remember a moment I had when I was 9 years old, actually, with Mr. Tinsley, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, when he was coaching me during basketball, and he just asked me a question. And in that stage of development at 9, a lot of your personalities develop, but you don't exactly know what you want to do. And he asked me, it's like, well, what do you think you want to do when you grow up? And the response was, it was very simple, but it wasn't a actual quote unquote job title like teacher, fireman, policeman. I said I wanted to help people. So it was simple. It rang true to my spirit. And in every facet of what I've done since then, I've always kind of held that as something that, yeah, you just feel better when you help people, because it makes you feel like you're a part of something larger and it's not all about you. So for me, that was like a moment that kind of rang true. I felt like that was my purpose on earth, and it really didn't go away. The job titles may have changed, the different things I did may have changed, but not that statement. Things pretty much aligned with that statement. So I ask you the same question when it comes to what do you think your purpose is on earth, or why do you think that you are here?
I think that I am here to empower others.
Okay.
I want to make sure that I can do everything in my power to make sure that somebody else gets to meet their goals. Sort of serving like what Mr. Tinsley served for you, asking people, what is it that you want to do and how do you want to get there and how can I help you get there? It's laying
Mm.
that path and laying that foundation for others to climb up and to exceed even what I've done. And I think that kind of speaks to what you were talking about before. It's the teacher's heart and always wanting to grow and always wanting to change and morph. I completely understand that people change throughout their lives. What I want to do is to be able to help them hone in on what direction do they think they want to go next? How can
Sure.
I help them get there? So I think the easiest way that I've been able to do that is through the classroom, through teaching, and not only the K through 12 classroom. I was a middle school teacher and a high school teacher, but also through the college classroom. And I think that's where I've seen even more of an intense desire to help people get to where they want to be, because as we know, college is one of those areas that sometimes you have to have a college degree in order to get the job that you want, in order to meet your calling or meet your purpose.
Sure.
So if I can have even one small slice of that and be there to help springboard you into what it is that you want to do and where you feel called and where you feel led to go, that to me is what my purpose is. I want to help you springboard and help you get there and just achieve everything you possibly feel like you have the potential to achieve.
Right, right. Well stated, well stated again. And you are doing that work here and abroad. I mean, even before we got on, talking about traveling to Ecuador and Africa and working with those different individuals in programs, helping them realize the dream that, anything is possible if you keep working forward, if you keep trying and keep just exploring life and doing the research that makes it happen. So again, thank you so much for taking this time out. I know you got papers to grade, probably
You
committee
do know
paperwork
that.
to look at, all kind of stuff. So definitely much appreciated. Again, I think this is going to help somebody realize that their dreams are possible. They can master themselves. They can continue to grow no matter what age they are. They can feel empowered by what we're discussing, because adversity is part of the journey and it can be overcome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's always great to talk with you. Again, we
Yes.
don't have to do it only this way, but
Right.
again, anytime you ask, I'm here for you.
And I do appreciate it. And I appreciate your friendship as well. Continue to inspire. Again, I think it just amplifies that there is a lot more that can be done and is being done. It just needs that spotlight, like what we're doing here tonight. So again, be well. I promise the next time I reach out, it won't be related to making you work.
I'm happy to share.
Definitely, definitely. And thank you for joining us for our first of 10 installments of Masterclass Transition Talks. Stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you soon. Y'all take care.